Karen tried to sue her ex's new girlfriend for $5,000. Walked into Judge Judy's courtroom with a smug smile and a folder full of evidence, thinking she had an airtight case. What she didn't know was that Judge Judy had already spotted every lie before Karen even opened her mouth. And when the judge asked one single question, just 7 words, Karen's entire world collapsed in front of millions of viewers. But here's the twist. The thing that made this case go viral. Karen's meltdown was so spectacular, so publicly humiliating, that it became a textbook example of what happens when entitlement meets reality. Stick around because what Judge Judy did to destroy this case is absolutely legendary. Before we dive into this incredible case, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing where my viewers are around the world. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss more unbelievable cases like this one. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. The air inside Judge Judy's courtroom carried that distinct tension that comes right before someone's life is about to change forever. The wood-paneled walls had witnessed thousands of liars, cheaters, and fools, but they were about to witness something special. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting an unforgiving glow that made it impossible to hide. This wasn't a place for sympathy or second chances. This was Judge Judy's domain, where excuses came to die and the truth was dragged into the light whether you wanted it there or not. The bailiff stood at attention, his face neutral but his eyes alert. He'd seen enough cases to know when someone was about to get destroyed, and today had all the signs. The gallery was packed, audience members leaning forward in their seats, sensing the drama that was about to unfold. Some had their arms crossed, already picking sides based on nothing but gut instinct. Others whispered to their neighbors, speculating about what would happen. The court stenographer's fingers hovered over the keys, ready to capture every word of what was about to become one of the most watched Judge Judy cases in history. Judge Judy herself hadn't even entered yet, but her presence was already felt. Her reputation preceded her like a storm cloud, a woman whose BS detector was calibrated to perfection through decades of cutting through lies. She didn't need fancy technology or lengthy cross-examinations. She needed about 30 seconds to size someone up and another minute to dismantle their entire story. Her courtroom wasn't about legal theatrics or dramatic speeches. It was about one thing, the truth. And if you walked in thinking you could manipulate, lie, or play the victim, you were about to learn a very expensive lesson. The wooden bench where she would sit was empty but commanding, her gavel resting beside it like a weapon waiting to be wielded. Behind that bench, through the door to her chambers, Judge Judy was reviewing the case file one last time. She'd already read Karen's complaint, seen the ridiculous claims, and noted the harassment text from the defendant's counterfiling. A slight smile had crossed her face, the kind of smile a chess master gets when they see their opponent's fatal mistake 3 moves before it happens. Before we see Judge Judy absolutely demolish this entitled ex-wife, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Trust me, you do not want to miss what happens when Karen realizes she's not the victim in this story. This gets so good. The courtroom door swung open with dramatic flair and in walked Karen Whitmore like she owned the place. Mid-40s, perfectly highlighted blonde hair styled in that unmistakable cut that had become a cultural phenomenon for all the wrong reasons. She wore an expensive cream-colored pantsuit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, paired with a designer handbag clutched in her manicured hands like a weapon she was ready to deploy. Her heels clicked against the floor with aggressive purpose, each step announcing her arrival as if she were walking into a board meeting she was about to dominate. But it wasn't confidence radiating from her. It was something else entirely. It was entitlement mixed with barely contained rage, wrapped in a thin veneer of victimhood she'd practiced in the mirror. Her face was set in that signature expression of righteous indignation, lips pursed, eyes scanning the room with contempt. She carried a thick folder stuffed with printed papers, screenshots, and what she believed was irrefutable proof of her case. This was her moment, or so she thought. Karen took her place at the plaintiff's table and immediately began arranging her materials with exaggerated precision, making sure everyone could see just how prepared she was. She shot a venomous glance toward the defendant's side, her expression making it clear that she wasn't here for justice. She was here for revenge, the gallery noticed. Whispers rippled through the audience as people recognized the type. Some felt immediate sympathy, buying into the scorned woman narrative before a single word was spoken. Others saw right through it, rolling their eyes at the performative anger. Karen seemed to feed off the attention, sitting up straighter, adjusting her blazer, preparing for what she believed would be her vindication. Then the other door opened, and Jessica Chen entered. The contrast was immediate and striking. Early 30s, dressed simply in dark jeans and a modest navy blouse that suggested she'd come straight from work. No designer labels, no statement jewelry, no theatrical entrance. She carried a single manila folder and a small purse, nothing more. Her face showed nervousness but also a quiet dignity. the look of someone who had done nothing wrong but was being forced to defend their right to simply exist. Jessica's eyes met Karen's for the briefest moment, and while Karen's gaze was filled with hate, Jessica's held only weary resignation. She'd been dealing with this woman's harassment for months, and now it had escalated to this. She sat down at the defendant's table with grace, her hands trembling slightly as she placed her folder in front of her. A few audience members who had initially sympathized with Karen now looked uncertain, their instincts telling them something didn't add up. Why would someone so calm and understated be the villain in this story? The bailiff's voice cut through the murmurs like a blade. "All rise!" The room shot to its feet in unison, the scraping of chairs and shuffling of feet filling the air. Then she entered. Judge Judy Shaindlin walked into her courtroom with the commanding presence of someone who had spent over 2 decades separating truth from fiction. Her black robe flowed behind her, her silver hair perfectly styled, her reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. She wasn't tall, but she didn't need to be. Her authority filled every corner of that room. Those sharp eyes, the ones that had seen every manipulation tactic in the book, swept across both parties in seconds. She looked at Karen, took in the designer outfit and the overstuffed folder, and her eyebrow raised just a fraction. Then she looked at Jessica, noted the simplicity in the nervous hands, and something flickered across her face. Recognition, not of the people, but of the dynamic. She'd seen this exact scenario play out dozens of times, and she already knew how it would end. Judge Judy took her seat with deliberate authority, adjusted her glasses, and glanced at the case file in front of her. "Case number 4277, she began, her voice carrying that distinctive New York directness that made millions tune in. "Karen Whitmore versus Jessica Chen. Ms. Whitmore, you're the plaintiff. You're suing for $5,000. She looked up from the file, her gaze landing on Karen with surgical precision. "Let's hear it. And please spare me the waterworks and the drama. I want facts. Can you handle that?" The question was simple, but it carried an edge. A warning that this wasn't going to be the sympathetic audience Karen had imagined. Karen stood, smoothing her suit jacket unnecessarily, buying herself a moment to launch into the performance she'd rehearsed. "Your Honor," she began, her voice dripping with manufactured emotion. "I am here today because that woman," she pointed directly at Jessica with her finger like she was identifying a criminal, "has deliberately and maliciously interfered with my life and caused me severe emotional distress." Judge Judy's face remained impassive, but her eyes narrowed slightly. She'd heard that opening line 1,000 times, and it never ended well for the person saying it. Karen's voice grew louder with each sentence, as if volume could substitute for legitimacy. "Your Honor, my ex-husband David and I were married for 15 years. 15 years. We built a life together, raised 2 beautiful children, created a home." Her voice cracked on cue, the tears just barely held back. "And then he threw it all away. He destroyed our family and this woman." Another dramatic point toward Jessica. She swooped in like a vulture before the dust even settled. She knew we were freshly divorced. She knew our children were struggling. But did she care? No. She flaunted their relationship right in my face. Karen opened her overstuffed folder with theatrical flair, pulling out printed Instagram screenshots like they were smoking gun evidence. "Look at this, Your Honor. Here they are at La Bella Vista, my favorite restaurant, the place where David proposed to me." Her voice trembled with indignation. "And here she's wearing a silver pendant necklace, almost identical to the one David gave me on our 10th anniversary. This is deliberate, Your Honor. She's trying to replace me, to erase me." The papers kept coming, a cascade of social media posts, text messages, receipts. And this is a text where she told David she was so excited about their future together. She knew I would see this. She wanted me to see it. She wanted to hurt me. Judge Judy's expression hadn't changed, but anyone who watched her regularly could see the slight tightening around her mouth. She'd already formed an opinion, and it wasn't favorable to Karen, but she let her continue, giving her enough rope. Karen's voice reached its emotional crescendo. "Your Honor, I've suffered panic attacks, insomnia, depression. I've had to start therapy because of what she's done to me. Every time I see them together online, it's like being stabbed in the heart all over again. I'm asking for $5,000 to cover my therapy costs and the emotional damage she has deliberately inflicted on me, because she knew exactly what she was doing when she started dating my ex-husband." Karen sat down with a satisfied exhale, actually believing she delivered a compelling case. She glanced at the gallery, expecting nods of sympathy, validation from other women who'd been wronged. Some audience members looked uncertain now. A few even seemed moved by her tears, but Judge Judy's face told a different story entirely. "Ms. Chen," Judge Judy said, her tone flat and unimpressed, "let's hear your side." Jessica stood slowly, her hand still trembling slightly but her voice steady. "Your Honor, I met David at a professional conference 9 months after his divorce was finalized. I didn't know him during his marriage. I didn't break up their home. When we started dating, he was completely single and had been for almost a year. She paused, gathering courage. I've never contacted Karen. I've never posted about her. The restaurant she mentioned? It's 3 blocks from my apartment. The necklace? I bought it at Target for $19. Jessica's voice grew stronger as she spoke, the truth giving her confidence. Your Honor, I'm not on social media very much. Those photos Karen showed you? They're from David's account, not mine. I didn't post them. I didn't tag locations to hurt her. I simply existed, and apparently that's a crime in her mind. She opened her single manila folder with quiet dignity, pulling out a small stack of printed text messages. But Karen has been anything but passive. These are messages she sent me over the past 6 months. She handed them to the bailiff, who walked them up to Judge Judy's bench. I've tried to ignore them, tried to be understanding that she's hurting. But it escalated from nasty texts to showing up at my workplace and now this lawsuit. Judge Judy began reading the messages, her eyebrows climbing higher with each one. The courtroom fell silent, watching her face as she processed what she was seeing. Her jaw tightened, her lips pressed into a thin line. When she finally looked up, her eyes had gone cold. Ms. Whitmore, she said, her voice carrying a dangerous edge. Did you send messages calling Ms. Chen a home-wrecking slut and threatening to make her life a living hell? Karen's face flushed red. Your Honor, I was emotional, I was hurt, Judge Judy held up her hand. It's a yes or no question. Did you send these messages? Karen's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Yes, but there was no but that would save her now, and somewhere deep down Karen knew it. Judge Judy set the messages aside and leaned back in her chair, studying Karen with the intensity of a predator who'd just cornered its prey. The courtroom held its collective breath. This was the moment everyone sensed something big was coming. Ms. Whitmore, Judge Judy began, her tone shifting from angry to clinically curious. I have one question for you. Just one, and I want you to answer it honestly, because your entire case hinges on your answer. She paused, letting the tension build, letting Karen's false confidence have one last moment to exist before it was obliterated. When you and David divorced, who left whom? The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Karen's face went from flushed to pale in an instant. Her mouth opened, then closed. Her eyes darted away from Judge Judy's penetrating stare, looking at her expensive folder, at the floor, at anything but the truth she was about to be forced to speak. Your Honor, that's not really relevant to... Judge Judy's voice cut through the deflection like a scalpel. Answer the question, Ms. Whitmore. Did he leave you or did you leave him? It's public record, so lying won't help you. Who left whom? The courtroom was so quiet you could hear Karen's sharp intake of breath. Her carefully constructed victim narrative was crumbling in real time, and everyone could see it happening. Her hands gripped the edge of the plaintiff's table, her knuckles turning white. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible, stripped of all its earlier theatrical emotion. He left me. Judge Judy leaned forward slightly, her voice firm. I'm sorry, the court reporter needs to hear you clearly. Speak up, please. Karen's voice came out louder now, cracking with real emotion this time. Not the manufactured kind. He left me, Your Honor. David left me, and there it was. The truth that Karen had been running from for over a year, now spoken aloud in front of strangers' cameras and the woman she'd been tormenting. Judge Judy nodded slowly, her expression saying she'd known the answer before she'd even asked. Judge Judy let the confession hang in the air for a moment, letting it sink into every corner of the courtroom. Then she continued, her voice taking on that tone she reserved for people who needed a hard truth delivered without mercy. And why did he leave you, Ms. Whitmore? Karen's eyes filled with tears. Real ones this time, the kind that come from a wound that's never healed. He said we'd grown apart. He said he wasn't happy anymore. He said he needed something different. Her voice broke completely. But we had children. We had a life. We had 15 years together, and he just walked away like none of it mattered. Judge Judy nodded. But there was no sympathy in her eyes. Only the cold calculation of someone who just confirmed everything she needed to know. So let me make sure I understand this correctly. Your husband chose to end your marriage. He filed for divorce. It was his decision, not yours. He waited 9 months, which is actually quite respectful, and then he started dating someone new, someone he met after your marriage was legally over, and you're standing in my courtroom suing her because why exactly? The question was rhetorical, devastating in its simplicity. Karen had no answer because there was no answer that made sense. Your case is dismissed, Judge Judy declared, her voice ringing with finality. Karen gasped, her hand flying to her chest like she'd been physically struck. Not only is it dismissed, but I'm awarding Ms. Chen $1,500 for the time, stress, and harassment you've put her through. The courtroom erupted in whispers, some audience members actually applauding before the bailiff shot them a warning look. Jessica's eyes widened in shock, tears forming, but not from sadness, from relief. Judge Judy wasn't finished. She removed her glasses, looking directly at Karen with an expression that was somehow both stern and almost maternal. "Miss Whitmore, let me tell you something, and I want you to really hear me. Your marriage ended. That's painful, I understand that. But you will never ever move forward if you keep looking backward. Your ex-husband moved on. That's his right as a single man. Ms. Chen did absolutely nothing to you except exist in his life after yours ended. This anger you're carrying around, it's only destroying you. Nobody else. Just you." The words hit harder than any legal ruling could. Karen sat frozen, her face a mixture of humiliation, rage, and something deeper. The first crack of self-awareness breaking through years of denial. "You want someone to blame?" Judge Judy continued. "Look in the mirror. You want respect? Show some dignity. Get therapy if you need it. But stop making innocent people pay for your pain. You're a grown woman. Act like it. We're adjourned." The gavel came down with a sharp crack that echoed through the silent courtroom. If you're loving this absolute destruction, smash that like button right now, and comment below if you've ever dealt with a crazy ex. Now let's see what happens when Karen completely loses it. Judge Judy stood and exited to her chambers, her robe flowing behind her, with the finality of justice served. The moment the door closed behind her, Karen exploded. She shot up from her chair so violently it scraped across the floor with a screech that made everyone flinch. "This is bullshit!" she screamed, her voice shrill and unhinged, all pretense of composure completely shattered. The bailiff immediately stepped forward, his hand raised in warning. "Ma'am, you need to calm down right now." But Karen was beyond reason, beyond caring about decorum or consequences. She whirled toward Jessica, pointing with a trembling finger, her face contorted with rage. "You think you won? You think this is over?" Her voice cracked with hysteria. "He's going to see through you eventually. You're nothing special. You're just newer, younger, but when he gets bored, you'll be exactly where I am." Jessica remained seated, her hands folded calmly in her lap, refusing to engage with the chaos erupting in front of her. Her silence only seemed to enrage Karen further. "Say something." "Defend yourself!" Karen shrieked, but Jessica just looked at her with something that might have been pity. That look, that calm, dignified pity, was the final straw. Karen grabbed her designer bag, papers spilling out of her overstuffed folder and scattering across the floor like her dignity. She didn't stop to pick them up. "This isn't over," she shouted as the bailiff firmly took her arm and began escorting her toward the exit. "I'll appeal this. I'll take this to a real court. You haven't seen the last of me." Her voice echoed down the hallway as she was led out, growing fainter but no less furious. The courtroom sat in stunned silence for a moment before the whispers began. Some people laughing in disbelief, others shaking their heads in second-hand embarrassment. Jessica stood slowly, her legs unsteady, but her spirit somehow lighter than it had been in months. The bailiff returned with paperwork for her to sign, and as she put pen to paper, a small, genuine smile crossed her face. Not a smile of victory or spite, but of relief. Finally, after months of harassment, threats, and fear, it was over. A few audience members approached her as she gathered her things. "You handled that with so much grace," an older woman said warmly. Jessica nodded her thanks, her voice soft. "I just want to live my life in peace now." What happened in that courtroom wasn't just about a dismissed lawsuit or a woman having a public meltdown. It was about something far more profound, something that millions of people needed to see. Judge Judy didn't destroy Karen's case with complex legal arguments or hours of testimony. She destroyed it with 7 words: who left whom. That single question cut through months of lies Karen had been telling herself, the narrative she'd constructed to avoid facing the painful truth. Her ex-husband didn't leave her for Jessica. He left her because their marriage was over. Jessica just happened to be the woman he met afterward, but in Karen's mind she needed a villain. She needed someone to blame because blaming herself or accepting that sometimes marriages just end was too painful. This is the trap that so many people fall into after a devastating breakup or divorce. Instead of processing the grief, accepting the loss, and moving forward, they create an enemy. They obsess over the new partner, stalking social media, comparing themselves, sending threatening messages, convincing themselves that if this new person just disappeared, somehow everything would go back to the way it was. But that's not how life works. Karen's ex-husband wasn't coming back whether Jessica existed or not. The marriage was over the day he walked out. But Karen spent 9 months making Jessica's life hell instead of healing her own heart. Judge Judy saw through it immediately because she's seen it 1,000 times before. The entitled ex who thinks their feelings give them the right to control other people's lives. The bitter former spouse who weaponizes the legal system for revenge. The person who genuinely believes that, because they're hurting, they're justified in hurting others. But pain doesn't excuse cruelty. Heartbreak doesn't justify harassment. And being left doesn't give you ownership over your ex's future. Karen learned that lesson the hardest way possible, in front of millions of viewers, with her meltdown captured forever on television. She walked in thinking she was the victim, and walked out $1,500 poorer, legally barred from contact, and exposed as the true villain of her own story. Jessica, on the other hand, got something money can't buy: vindication and peace. She'd done nothing wrong except fall in love with a single man. Yet she'd been terrorized for months by a woman who couldn't let go. The court order gave her legal protection, but Judge Judy's ruling gave her something even more valuable: validation that she wasn't crazy, wasn't the bad guy, and didn't deserve any of the abuse Karen had inflicted. Sometimes that's all someone needs to finally exhale and move forward. The lesson here is simple but powerful. You cannot sue someone for existing in your ex's life. You cannot punish people for your own unhealed wounds. And you definitely cannot walk into Judge Judy's courtroom with lies, harassment, and entitlement expecting sympathy. The truth always comes out, and when it does, you better hope you're on the right side of it. So what do you think? Did Karen get what she deserved, or should the consequences have been even harsher? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And if you love watching entitled people get destroyed by cold hard facts, subscribe right now, because I break down viral court cases like this every single week. Hit that notification bell so you never miss the drama. Thanks for watching, and remember, Judge Judy doesn't play games, and neither should you when it comes to the truth. See you in the next one.